following program contains mature themes on a thematic subject. Viewer discretion is strictly advised. State of the Nation is an opinion-based program. The thoughts and opinions shared within this program are not intended to offend or disregard anyone's perspectives or beliefs. We aim to foster open dialogue, encourage critical thinking, and explore thought-provoking subjects. Recognizing the importance of diversity and inclusion, this program welcomes all viewpoints and cherishes the right to express them freely. This program also contains the opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Good evening. Tonight, Sri Lanka at a turning point, power, pressure, and our next move. Our nation is sitting on the world's busiest chessboard, and the big players are starting to speak out loud. Washington is basically saying our island can be too important to ignore. And while the outside game heats up, we're still running the inside game on repeat. Another rescue, another promise, and another round of belt tightening, while ordinary people wonder when recovery reaches their kitchen table. For insights, analysis, and opinions, tonight I'll speak to the former economic and security advisor to the government of Japan, Professor Nobukatsu Kanehera, an economist and researcher at Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, Shiran, Illanperuma. Good evening, I am Mahieash Johnney, and this is the State of the Nation. A very good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to spend your evenings with us. As always, there's a lot we have to talk about. Also, a one-on-one interview that I have to bring it to you, which I had with the former economic and security advisor to the government of Japan, Professor Nobukatsu Kanehera. Now, that's coming up later on in the program. But first, well, we need to talk about a line that should make Sri Lanka shudder. Now, a senior U.S. official goes to a subcommittee hearing in the United States and says that our strategic location has outsized importance and can make us a target for coercion. And that is not a compliment, that is a warning wrapped in polite language, because when a country is valuable on the map, it becomes valuable to other people's plans. And when other people have plans, pressure does not always come as threats. Sometimes it comes as deals that sounds too good to refuse or too good to be true. Sometimes it comes as security cooperation with strings you only notice later. Sometimes it comes as investment for ports, telcos, and energy projects, and the fine print quietly decides our future. Now, in that same statement, he says defense cooperation with the United States helps protect borders and waterways against encroaching powers. He also sells the idea of targeted investment that is transparent and non-coercive. And he takes a swipe at debt trap diplomacy, of course, at the direction of China. Now, pause there. This is exactly why Sri Lanka cannot treat foreign policy like a piece of paper that has no value, because every big power will describe its offer as the clean offer, the best offer that is on the table. Every big power will describe the other side's offer as the dangerous offer. And if we are not strong, we do not choose the terms. The terms chooses us. We always say, do business with everyone. Yes, trade with everyone, talk to everyone, build relationship everywhere. But here's the part we avoid saying out loud. Now, if you try to stand in the middle with weak leadership, you're not neutral. You are available. And being available is how small countries get leaned on quietly, professionally, and repeatedly. So if Sri Lanka wants to be in the middle, that middle needs muscle. Not loud speeches, not parades and not ceremonies, not few catchy statements within our nation's parliament. Actual muscle. A foreign policy that does not change every time a different government walks in. A negotiating team that understands security, finance, and strategy, not just photo ops. Clear national red lines about what we will not sign, what we will not lease, what we will not compromise at any given time. And transparency that is real, so the public can see the price and the conditions before the country is locked in. Because the official also says South Asia is vitally important for the United States. He points to India's size and the idea that if a hostile power dominates South Asia, it can gain coercive leverage over the world economy. Now understand that particular statement. In order to take control of the world economy, you need South Asia. So from their viewpoint, this is not a hobby. This is a core strategy. And when you are in someone's core strategy, they will push, they will persuade, they will pressure, they will call it a partnership. So Sri Lanka has to stop pretending that we are friends with everyone is a full policy. It is not. It is a slogan, a good one. In modern day and age, it doesn't mean anything. A real policy is we engage everyone, but we depend on no one. We take investment, but we do not hand over strategic control. Otherwise, the middle becomes the most dangerous place to be. Not having a viewpoint is the most dangerous thing we can do, because both sides will pull. And if you are not strong enough to hold your ground, you do not stay in the middle. You get ripped in half. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Now, in our lead story tonight, Sri Lanka's IMF loop stabilized today, broke again tomorrow. Look, I get why people keep saying IMF is not the solution, because if the IMF was the solution, you and I wouldn't be having the same conversation so many times on this program or any other platform. The IMF's own record shows Sri Lanka has gone back for repeated arrangements over decades. And as of September 30th, 2024, the table lists 16 arrangements. And people often say 17, depending on how they count overlapping facilities. Either way, the point is the same. It is a repeat cycle. Now, here's where the confusion happens. People look at one or two indicators and say, see, it worked. Like GDP turning positive, or reserves going up, or inflation coming down. Now, those are really improvements, absolutely yes. For example, after the 2022 crash, reserves climbed from roughly $1.9 billion to about $6.1 billion in 2024, and now closing in on, I believe, $7 billion with targets of making it $8 billion by the end of the year. And the World Bank says growth was about 5% in 2024, 4 to 5% in 2024. And the central bank says 2025, we had a growth of around 4%, and then they target the same this year as well. So the patient is no longer in the emergency room. But not dying is not the same thing as healthy. If the economy was truly fixed, we wouldn't still be stuck with the same core weaknesses that drag us back into crisis. Here's the simplest one. Government income. Sri Lanka's tax revenue is around 13% of GDP in recent data. I believe that is the 2024 numbers. That's like a household trying to run a family, pay rent, pay school fees, and also repay big loans. But the salary is too small. So what happens next is predictable. You borrow, you cut, you squeeze, you patch it up. And then you hit the next shock. And you're back in the same movie again. And while the graph starts looking calmer, people's lives don't magically get calmer. The World Bank puts poverty at about 24.5% in 2025. 24.5. So yes, you can stabilize the macro numbers and still have a country where a big chunk of people are living like the crisis never ended for them. And then there is the most brutal proof that repeat of IMF programs plus temporary calm is not the same as fixed. Sri Lanka suspended external debt payments in April of 2022. That is not a small technical detail. That is the system admitting it can't keep going the same old way. Now, at the latest scene to the same movie, the IMF Managing Director comes to Sri Lanka, tells us to stay with the program, and says we have a unique opportunity to grow now, not later, now. And I'm here thinking, okay, so what was the opportunity all the other times, like all the 15 or the 16 times? Because the line suddenly sounds like this: trust us, this time it's different. And somehow the magic is supposed to happen now. It is supposed to kick back in now. And it was never in all those past instances. So when I say IMF is not the solution, I'm not doing a big dramatic show here. I'm saying the IMF can help stop the bleeding, but it doesn't build the muscles. If we keep treating it like the whole plan, we'll keep getting the same old ending. A short-term calm period, then another crash, then another program, and then more of tightening our belts. So what should we do instead? Well, if the government don't want to do no IMF as a slogan, well, then we have to do no betting on one horse. Use stabilization as the flow, then build the real engine. We have to earn dollars the hard way by selling more products, more of our own products to the world than we buy. Push our exports up, the value chain, so we're not trapped in low margin work, like give some kind of value to our products, not send out the raw material and somebody in the middle gets all the premium money. We got to fix our tourism so it earns more per visitor, not just more arrivals. We've been talking so much about arrival numbers. The numbers does not matter if we can't cover the cost that we actually spend per tourist. We got to put serious investment into production and services that can export, not just quick money that disappears. And build trade and regional links that make Sri Lanka part of supply chains, where the money is in making and shipping, not in borrowing and consuming. Because at the end of the day, charts don't pay debts and graphs don't feed families. Let's get political economist and researcher at Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, Shiran Illanperuma, to the conversation. Shiran, thank you very much for joining me. Well, Shiran, she came, she saw. Did she conquer more?
Hi, Mahieash. First of all, glad to be on the show again. Well, to be honest, Mahieash, there was nothing much left to conquer, right? Our own president, Kumar Dissanayake, has been saying, I think, since about 2024, even shortly after his first budget speech, that Sri Lanka does not have economic sovereignty. I was on your show recently with Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development, Mr. Chatura Abesegna, and he basically intimated the same sentiment, that Sri Lanka does not have sovereignty. Why is this the case? Well, the government's arms and legs are basically tied due to the series of very neoliberal reforms that were conducted right before they came into power by the interim administration, right? So you have things like the Central Bank Act, which ties up monetary policy freedom for the elected officials. You have the Public Debt Management Act, the Economic Transformation Act, and this whole infrastructure of legislation that's designed to basically curtail the ability of elected officials to carry out economic policy, right? So everything is just left up to the market and a bunch of unelected technocrats. So, sadly, I think there was nothing much left to conquer when the IMF MD came here recently. And in fact, it's more of a victory lap, really.
Yeah, absolutely, Shiran. Now, talking about this IMF program and its 17th run, take us through the numbers. Many IMF-leaning institutions and agencies say that, see, the growth rate of Sri Lanka improved under IMF programs. Is that claim accurate? And if that is the case, then why are we opposing their support?
Look, Mahesh, growth last year, I think, was about 5%. They are saying we might hopefully reach another 5% this year. That is on the back of a very long and painful contraction, right? So achieving 5% growth on the back of a contraction is not really a huge achievement, right? And also, what is the kind of activities that drove this growth, right? It was the usual. It was remittances, it was tourism, a slight uptick in construction and real estate. We are yet to see a really transformative agenda when it comes to industrial policy, when it comes to agricultural self-sufficiency, and really upgrading Sri Lanka's infrastructure, right? Which is extremely poor, actually. I think we need to keep in mind the numbers that matter, right? The real numbers that matter. And a lot of these, strangely enough, were brought up by the World Bank in a report a couple of months ago. More than a quarter of the population was thrust into poverty after the crisis, and through the implementation of the IMF reforms and conditionality, right? So reforms like cost-reflective utility pricing, right? Energy pricing, very damaging to the poorest segments of the population. You have the fact that real GDP, right, is not going to reach 2018 levels until this year or perhaps next year, right? So we are not going forward. We are in 2018. We're in pre-COVID days. The idea of moving forward from here requires a vastly different agenda than what the IMF can offer, right? It requires a vastly different imagination, if you will. If you look at people's everyday existence, real wages today are 14 to 24% lower than what they were before the economic crisis. So in real terms, people are poorer today. All people, the vast majority of people, except for maybe a narrow 1% of the population, are poorer today, have less purchasing power today, have less ability to consume today than they did before this crisis started. That is a reality. Those are the numbers we should be looking at, not just abstract growth figures.
Absolutely. Shiran, we know a huge hike of electricity is to come our way in the second half of this year. That's going to push prices up literally of everything. Does it look like the government can keep the prices stable and ensure consumers are not put into a mess?
That's a very good question and a very tough one. Frankly, I think it's going to be very difficult for the government to unilaterally control the price of electricity because of the various conditionalities that we've already discussed, and also because of the fact that the global environment is extremely uncertain. Sri Lanka is very dependent on, the oil prices globally, right? Fossil fuel prices. There is also the factor of climate change. Climate patterns are extremely unstable right now. So even when it comes to a renewable base in hydroelectric power, that can be very unstable as well. The need of the hour is more investment in energy. And this is not just Sri Lanka. This is a crisis that I think every developing country in the world is facing today. And, few countries have been able to come to a level of energy sovereignty and energy self-sufficiency, right? That is what Sri Lanka needs to be looking towards. I've often come on the show and talked about industrialization. Well, frankly, there is no industry without energy, without electrification, right? It is the base, it's the foundation for everything. It is as essential as, oxygen for breathing. Without energy, there is really no way to talk about some sort of a sovereign, independent, autonomous industrialization path for Sri Lanka, right? Any kind of self-sufficiency in our production capabilities, that's just not there. What the government should be looking at really is to get investment and to get it on terms that safeguard Sri Lanka's sovereignty. It's not just electricity. This is also in other areas like fuel, for example. A year ago, there was a discussion about a 3.7 billion investment from Sinopec, a Chinese SOE, to develop the Hambantota port as an oil refinery. Very sad that we haven't seen any progress on that, right? We know the cost of fuel is very influential on economic activity in Sri Lanka. It has a direct impact even on food prices in Sri Lanka, right? So without those kinds of investments going forward very quickly, it's very hard for the government to unilaterally control the price of electricity. There needs to be an increase in capacity from the investment side. There needs to be a greater supply of energy for this country to meet our development aspirations.
Absolutely, Shiran, as always, good seeing you and talking to you. Political economist and researcher at the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, Shiran Illanperuma. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mahesh.
Let's take a quick break. When we return, I sat down with former economic and security advisor to the government of Japan, Professor Nobukatsu Kanehera, who was in Sri Lanka last week. That interview coming up shortly. This is the State of the Nation. Back to you. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Last week, the former economic and security advisor to the government of Japan, Professor Nobukatsu Kanehera, was in Sri Lanka, taking part in the Pathfinder Indian Ocean Security Conference. And the professor has been in a long list of impressive roles. His recent was being the Assistant Chief Cabinet Secretary to Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe from 2012 to 2019 and Deputy Secretary General of the National Security Secretariat of Japan from 2013 to 2019. Now, I managed to catch up with the professor in the sidelines of the conference to talk about many things regarding regional prospects for Sri Lanka, lessons we can learn from Japan, and what Sri Lanka must do in order to be economically prosperous. Here's that interview. What I really wanted to start and try to get an understanding is what can Sri Lanka learn from Japan and its economic discipline that has made Japan what that nation is today? Because after the Second World War, y'all were in a very dire condition, and it didn't look like that Japan might come out. But Japan did, and Japan has become a testament for the rest of the world as well. And on top of it, y'all are really good friends with Sri Lanka. Y'all are the ones who actually took the steps to talk to our creditors when we were going through a crisis here in 2022. So what can we learn from Japan and its economic discipline?
Well, it's the population, people. In Meiji time, it's 1868, we destroyed the Tokugawa shogunates. Yeah. We unleashed at that time, the population was 30 million, very big population. And we liberated the energy of the people, 30 millions. And very low-ranking people and poor people, they given chance and to galvanize the whole nation and to make a new nation, new identity. We are somehow successful. Japan was the only one precursor of industrialization in Asia, and that was a big cause. You have to grasp the moment of expansion. Now Sri Lanka is now over the war, over the political confusion, and now totally restart the new Sri Lanka, right? Then you have to galvanize people, and you have to take advantage of your strength. That's a key. For me, the West Asia is now rising. Japan rose in 19th century. I made a big mistake in the war. We fought against all the white people here, and we destroyed ourselves. We destroyed all the colonies here, and we could not replace it by new ideas. American states and the West changed too. They abandoned racism, they abandoned colonialism. We have the new world here. And there we thought it's a chance for us, free trade. And at that time, still, our population was growing. And we used that. And we used up people's energy, and we made industry again, and jumped out. Sri Lanka population is 23 million, right?
22 million.
22 million. It's the size of Australia, the
Yes.
size of Taiwan.
Yes.
It's smaller than Malaysia. You have good people, very educated, hardworking, honest people, the Buddhists. And the big advantage for Sri Lanka now is Indian rise. Japan rose, and then China rose, and the ASEAN nations rose, but we are not peaking out. East Asia is peaking out. West Asia is rising. And this is a very big chance because India is the last superpower, possible one.
I want to get.
You have to get this chance because India has no good ports.
I want to get into that during the conversation. I really want to talk about how the rise of India and how Sri Lanka can actually plug ourselves in. But going a little bit back and trying to learn from Japan itself, because I'm still fascinated with this particular theory of what Japan did right. And what I really wanted to get was that discipline back into Sri Lanka's efforts of trying to rebuild. We've been trying to do this for quite some time. 2009 was the time we ended the war, and we are at 2026, and we're still talking about rebuilding. So there is something of that. Now, what made Japan the quality that it is today in terms of whatever they do? It's the best quality, whether televisions, the production economy, whatever they do, it has the quality, and that is resonating all throughout the world. How did you make that happen? You talked about a little bit about population, driving them towards getting things done. What drove them to that? Because we also have the same population, but still we are not being able to push that towards that level.
Education is very important. In Japan, we had the many schools, private schools everywhere, where the farmers, merchants, their kids are there. Literacy was very high in Japan. That's maybe the major reason for Japan to be industrialized at a very early time. And through population, you can discipline people. You have to share the national goal to survive, to become rich, to take care of the poor people. You have to share this national goal. That we can do that together. A leader must show that to the people. Then people get united to support the governments, and you can do it. There are divisions, of course. The Marxists say the liberals and the capitalists, the big divisions here. Divisive thoughts will not help much. You have to keep the old people together to make this nation prosperous. You have to share the goal. Then people can be united, and they make their utmost efforts. And furthermore, to do that, you have to share the deep spirituality and morality. We have Buddhist tradition, somehow Confucius, Shintoists, but we sharpened our morality for several centuries. You have it. You have it. This is a very moral, spiritual nation, right? You do share that. If you share that, you can unite people, because people believe in goodness of people. You can work together. But you need a good leader for that.
In terms of policy, the consistency of policy, is that important?
Yes. We chose after the war, we chose the Western side and free trade. And very frankly, after we were defeated, we said, we accepted defeats. We are samurai nations, defeat is defeat. Okay, we're sorry for that. We're defeated. That's fine, we said. But all the Europeans came back with guns to reconquer Dutch, French, and British. We said, what's wrong? They are wrong, right? Sri Lankan delegation in San Francisco Peace Treaty said Japan is bad, but everybody's bad. They said, we do remember that. But they changed. Americans came in with new ideas, free trade. That helps us a lot. If you work hard, people work hard, you can get money, sell things to the foreign countries, become very rich. We said this is a very good system for us. And after Americans, Europeans abandoned racism, abandon colonialism. We said, they are making a good world. We have to help them, and we can be with them, and we join the right side. And this kind of policy choice is very important. If we had chosen the communist side, Japan is not here today. Japan could be a very big North Korea. But this kind of strategic choice is very important.
Let me ask you, so you chose the Western side. Now, Sri Lanka, you also said earlier on, East Asia is peaking out. And there's a conversation about China rising and then India rising too. But then there is the conversation on the Western side. America don't want to give its dominance. They want to be very strong. You see Donald Trump making big moves to keep that American status going on in terms of its economic policy and the economic hegemony within that Western hemisphere. So where should Sri Lanka choose?
Well, Americans are reorganizing their priorities. We have to understand that the US was 80% or 60% of world economy. Today, they occupy only 25%. And they chose to sustain this free world after 1940-45, because Europe devastated, Japan devastated, nobody was there. It's only the United States. And they created a new world. But now they are shrinking in proportion. Global South is rising. And China and Russia are making troubles. And the US is now saying, we are tired. And the Trump's supporters are low-income people. They are shouting, take care of us, not the foreigners. Why do you spend money, say, in foreign conflicts? Save us, because we are poor, we are suffering. Do something. That Trump, I'll do this, he said. So this population is not majority, but strong minority. US changed. So we have to understand that. They have to take care of their own people. So the Trump's priority is one, Western Hemisphere. And for the Europeans, they say, you are rich people, take care of yourself. And Middle East, confusion, Palestine and Gaza. But somehow precarious peace is maintained somehow there. It's very dangerous still, but somehow. But in Asia, Americans can't withdraw, simply because we have no NATO, we have no EU. It's only Japan, Korea, Philippines, Thailand, and Australia. These are American allies, much weaker than NATO. China is not very big, and they are trying to conquer Taiwan, Senkaku Island ours. They say South China Sea is my sea. We're sending, excuse me, sir, you can't do that. But without Americans, we can't sustain that. And Americans are not withdrawing from Asia. They are committed still in Asia, but we have to help them. Because they feel tired, and we have to help them. We are upon their shoulders, right? They say, get off my shoulder. They say, we got off, and we try to support them. And we found that the United States is no longer Superman. We have to support them together. This is the only way.
Are you saying that the United States is no longer in a power position right now, and that their internal conflicts has bred them, and because of that there are opportunities for the rest of the nations around the world to basically come and fill that void?
Yeah, so we have to fill in their voids, but to support this system. This system is not a bad system. Today's liberal order that Americans created, and now they are saying tired to support this at all. But compare this with the early 20th century. There was no Asia. This is all Europe. Racial discrimination was accepted. Colonialism was accepted. And war was okay to make. But it's only latter half of the 20th century. These are all prohibited. War is prohibited. Racism was just wiped away. Colonialism is wiped away, and free trade is open to everybody, and we have to sustain this order. But we cannot ask Americans alone to do this. We have to share the burden. Otherwise, the whole system will collapse again. We can't go back to the 19th century.
But do you think the Americans would allow anybody to come and help them? Because it looks like Donald Trump does not want to do that.
But this is particularly Mr. Trump. Usually, a leader unites the followers and face the opponents, like Putin or Xi Jinping, and make peace. It's much better to make peace than to fight a war. But Mr. Trump he boxes down the allies. But we have to prove that allies are not a burden. Allies are assets for the United States. With allies, US can be much, much stronger than standing alone.
In your opinion, where should Sri Lanka be looking into? Should we be looking into India? Should we be looking into China? Should we be looking into the Western Hemisphere? Because every single economist, every single theorist says the days of the Western world and this Western economic dominance is slowly fading away, and it's China and India that's going to take over. So where should Sri Lanka position itself?
You have to see the system as a whole. This is Western system, right? And in particular, free trade and individual liberalism. And this is widely shared by the Asians too. So militarily, we can't help Americans, they're far stronger. But the economically, we have sustained free trade. We have to continue to say that. Japan is saying that. Japan, they concluded CPTPP without Americans. And Japan concluded RCEP. And Japan concluded Japan-EU free trade agreement. EU is doing the same thing. EU, Mexico, the Latin Americans, Indonesia, and India. We are sustaining free trade. We believe that Mr. Trump, MAGA people support him, but it's only 20 or 30% people. Republicans need them, so Republicans became Trump party. Democrats are much less popular than Republicans. It's a big problem for us. But this is not forever. Majority of Americans still believe that they are leader of the world, and they still believe in free trade. They still believe that allies are important. We should not believe that this Monroe Doctrine in the United States will continue forever. Maybe Mr. Vance could follow the Trump's line, but if the other parties take power, or if some other people comes, the next president like Rubio, for example, this can be a different United States. We should not let Trump's America continue forever.
Well, a lot more from Professor Nobukatsu Kanehera, but before that, let's take a short break. This is the State of the Nation. Back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Here's the rest of the interview with former Economic and Security Advisor to the Government of Japan, Professor Nobukatsu Kanehera.
Yes.
Do you honestly think, because there's this conversation within Sri Lanka that happens, that we should not plug ourselves into India because it would make us lose our sovereignty as a nation? But then, analyzing what you're saying, by plugging ourselves into India, it would be economically very advantageous because it gives us the ability to give India something that they don't have, deep ports. So we are like, either that way or this way or that way. What do you think we should be thinking when making decisions based on that particular thing? Is it the sovereignty factor, which is also very crucial? We need to keep our sovereignty as a separate nation. Mm-hmm. But then again, economically, still we have to be flourishing as well. Not to be a threat to India, but to be basically a nation that can take care of its own self, rather than always taking
you should understand your basic national interests. Sovereignty, first of all, stability, peace. For that purpose, you have to make a good balance. And nobody wants to invade Sri Lanka because it's too important. And so
But won't they? Because of its importance? Because we are very important in terms of location. Ports-wise, location is absolutely key. So there could be a point where China will say, well, let's go and take over Sri Lanka, or America might say that. So by us not being on this side or that side, is that a safe move?
Well, you have to take your position. Japan took position in the West
Exactly.
and facing Russians and Chinese and North Koreans, and it was successful. And I believe that the Sri Lanka is in the liberal order, and they're making huge amount of sort of benefits from there, free trade and liberal democracy, and I believe that Sri Lanka is on our side. But the power politics wise, you have to see India here, huge one. To balance that, you need Americans, you need of course some Chinese, but I don't recommend Sri Lanka to go to China, because China could dominate. They want to make the other smaller nations sort of vassal states, small ones. You should not accept that. Sovereignty is equal, right? This is liberal order. Sovereignty is equal. We stay here. And economically, you should take fruits of Indian rice. You should take advantage of that.
How can our policies reflect that in terms of taking advantage of the subcontinent becoming more economically prosperous? Policy-wise, what kind of policy should direct towards that?
You should use your ports. You should modernize your port. India is rising very rapidly. It's still going up in this way, but at some moment they go up in this way. China did this. We did that. China, up to 2010, they were smaller than Japan. Amazing, isn't it? They are now 4 times bigger than Japan. It started in 2010. After they joined WTO, they just in this way. And this will happen in India too. At that time, the volume of trade will expand hugely. Then you need to modernize your ports with the computer, the cranes, container, and you should prepare for that. And that can make your countries more prosperous because of the trade.
In terms of what kind of economic trade and economic businesses, the type of businesses, would it be infrastructure related? Would it be IT? Would it be AI? We are talking in that generation right now. When India is basically booming, where are the opportunities, or is it going to be multifactorial?
Well, you can be investing to AI, or you are now making apparel industry very booming, right? And you have to choose. The AI goes into everywhere.
Yeah.
The port management, everywhere. AI comes in anyway. But competing with the AI is very costly. China is paying huge amount of money for national security purpose, or domestic security purpose, and they do this. Americans and Chinese and some Indians and Europeans and Japanese a bit here. But if you wish to compete with AI, you need a huge amount of money. You need a huge industry here. I don't think it is the way to go. You have to use AI. You have to pay money for that, but you have to use AI. But creating AI industry here in Sri Lanka, I don't think it's worthwhile.
In terms of security, let's talk a little bit about the regional security here within the Indian Ocean and Sri Lanka itself. If there is a rise of economic powerhouse in the subcontinent, mainly India, what kind of security risk would countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, the smaller countries around India would face?
This region is now peaceful. At peace, you finished the war inside, right? Bangladesh.
But there is a big conflict, India and Pakistan.
That will continue a long time. You have to face it. Yeah, that will continue. I don't see in the near future they shake hands about the nuclear weapons. That will not happen. That's the reality. You have to accept it. But basically, this region will be okay. No big fighting except India and Pakistan. But they have both nuclear weapons. They don't fight a big war. It's somehow stabilized. China is coming down. Nepal, and in particular Bhutan, and the Arunachal Pradesh area.
Yes.
It's a bit thorny area, but I don't think they have a big war, because Himalayan mountains that separates China and India It's difficult to penetrate these mountains. Massive invasion is not possible. So this region could be okay. You should reap the economic fruits of the industrialization now. I believe that basically, like Abe-san said, the liberal order is expanding into Indo-Pacific. That means individualism, the conscience, love is the basis, and then the democratic institutions are implanted, and we can make this function. And this is the way to realize economic expansion and welfare states, not revolutions. You can unite people, and the economically industrialization is coming here. We have to reap the fruit of that. And strategically, I don't think the big war happens here. So you can choose a position, and you can take advantage of your ports and become a rich nation using your ports, and you have developed some industry here inside. Apart from the apparel, I believe that tourism is a very good part.
So we've been talking about Sri Lanka's economic prospects. I want to get your take with regard to, you're also a security expert, so the foreign policy per se, we have strictly maintained a status of non-aligned. Basically say everybody is welcome, everybody can do business with Sri Lanka, and everybody can profit from Sri Lanka while Sri Lanka profits as well. That has in sometimes has worked well for us, sometimes it has not, because everybody wants us to be their partner. When you're not their partner, then they sometimes get upset a little bit in major issues. So that is our foreign policy. But economically, we can be very, very independent in terms of selecting. So how does that, like, should our foreign policy also change in this new economic order that we are trying to achieve? Or what exactly should Sri Lanka be thinking of?
The world changed when non-alignment movement appears. Soviet bloc and US bloc fighting against each other. This is over. There's no longer communist bloc. And the free world is expanding. It's again, China and Russia is challenging a bit again. But if you do share the democratic values, if you do share the free trade system, you are now in this liberal order. But militarily, you are not allies of the United States, right? If China invades Taiwan, US will come in. And we have said to China, sorry China, we are with Americans. We have said that, we're allies. You are not. That means you have freer position. But you can take position. But you have to pay attention to the major powers conflicts. And that's time you have to choose somehow sides. You can be neutral, of course. You can be neutral, or you can help either one. But it's your choice. But you have to do this carefully. You are freer than Japan. You're not bound by alliance. But you have to choose good sides. You have to choose the right ones. Apart from these contingencies, you can make balance among powers. India is a big one here. Americans will help you anytime because this is important strategically. China is of course interested in Sri Lanka. You can make a good balance among them in peacetime.
That is actually a very good point, because what you're saying is you have not allowed Japan to be Americanized or make Europeanized, but it has actually taken what they have been thinking in terms of their thinking process and make it their own version, the Japanese version of those kinds of traits. And that is why Japan has managed to stay sovereign in those particular philosophies. I think one of the key lessons we can learn from Japan is that yes, those world orders remain, but we don't have to be an American Sri Lanka or a European Sri Lanka or an Indian Sri Lanka, but we can be Sri Lankan but still have those values keep going on. That's a very valuable message, because within that there is a lot of acceptance in my own self as well, because for us to think that when we are being pushed to lose ourselves, then it's problematic. Then we don't like the Western concept or the East concept. Now, if it is for us to do our own thing based on the same principles, then it's absolute right. Do you think that Sri Lanka can do that?
Of course, yes. every nation can do that. Because we have the deep spirituality polished by Buddhism. I'm Buddhist too. And the one phrase of Buddha supported me during my professional life, 40 years. The Buddha says, find yourself inside you and break the darkness. You can find truth there. And Buddha never explained what the truth was. But later, the monks said, it's love, it's compassion, it's sort of the warm heart here. And when you know that, you can believe in goodness of people. And we're not transplanting white Christian ideas inside us. We had it. Simply we have to remember that. Then we can make function European-born systems. And we have to show the examples. We did. We made big mistakes, but we did in the end. And Sri Lanka can do that. We have deep spirituality.
Finally, what message do you have for Sri Lankans and its leaders?
Oh, Sri Lanka is reborn. And Sri Lanka is a very important strategic location. And a very good chance for the expansion of India. You can take advantage of that. This century is Western Asian century, and Sri Lanka will lead it.
Professor Nobukatsu Kanehera, really appreciate, and it's been an honor speaking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that's the full interview. There was a lot to digest from that interview. Not gonna lie, when the professor said that we should be choosing the United States and the open market, it was too much for me to take. However, later on, as you saw, he made this very vital point, which I wholeheartedly agree. We can take the systems from the West, but we have to base it on our values. The moment we try to do that, we find prosperity. And the moment we try to be someone else, like make Sri Lanka to be like the United States or Europe, and forego our national and Buddhist heritage and values, well, then we lose ourselves along with our country. I hope you learned a thing or two from that conversation we had with Professor Kanehera. Well, with that, we wrap up this edition of State of the Nation. Thank you very much for watching. Send us your comments to feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or WhatsApp your feedback on 076 805 7933. We'll be back again next week with more views you can trust and, of course, opinions you cannot ignore. See you then. Bye for now. Have a good night.
I get the chance to grow. I don't know if I can take this anymore. So why you trying to break me? I don't know if I can stay on board. You know the hardest thing is to say goodbye to someone you love. That's the hardest thing. I'm not your enemy. Your legacy frightens me. Will I keep it gold or will it spoil before I get the chance to grow? You know the